Diane and I have been watching the old BBC television series called Lark Rise to Candleford. And there's a relationship in that story that has really gotten my attention. There's a character named Dorcas Lane, and she takes on a young woman as a housekeeper named Minnie. Now, Minnie is good-hearted. She's affectionate, she's eager to please, and, well, Minnie lies. She tells fibs. They're not big fibs. They're not calculated lies. It's little lies. For example, Dorcas might ask her, "Minnie, have you started the laundry?" And Minnie will say, "Yes, Mum." But Dorcas looks at her, "Minnie?" "Well, I'm nearly started, Mum." Dorcas waits. And eventually, "No, Mum, I haven't started." And here's the part Diane and I began noticing. Dorcas doesn't explode. She doesn't humiliate Minnie. She doesn't say, "How dare you lie to me?" Instead, when Minnie finally tells the truth, Dorcas acknowledges it. She says something like, "Very good, Minnie." So, what I've noticed is that Dorcas is teaching Minnie something. And I don't think she's merely teaching her not to lie. She's teaching her it's safe to tell me the truth. Now that got me thinking about something I've observed for much of my life. We tend to complain that people lie to us. Our children lie. Our partners aren't forthcoming. Someone leaves out part of the story. And understandably, we may become angry. Like, "How could you lie to me?" But there's another question I've learned to ask. What happens when someone tells me the truth? Because sometimes, without realizing it, we are actually teaching people to lie to us. Now, years ago, I knew a woman who frequently complained about her teenage son and how he would lie to her. She would say, "He's such a liar." But I observed something between their interactions. And finally, one day I said to her, "You know, he lies because he knows what's going to happen if he tells you the truth." If the boy admitted doing something wrong, the truth didn't simply bring consequences. It often brought judgment or anger, reprimand or shame. So what was the child learning? Not necessarily that lying is good. He was learning the truth is dangerous. And that's a very different lesson. And this is what I want to talk about today. Now, this doesn't excuse dishonesty. When someone lies to us, that choice still belongs to them. And some people lie to manipulate others. Some lie to escape responsibility, and some become habitual liars. Making honesty safe does not mean becoming gullible or allowing people to violate our boundaries. But many everyday lies are more complicated. Sometimes people lie because they're afraid. They may be afraid of anger, afraid of rejection, afraid of disappointing someone, afraid of losing face, or afraid of losing love. And when we learn to understand that the nervous system senses threat, human beings become remarkably creative at protecting themselves. We can easily deny things, or we minimize. We avoid the whole truth. We leave something out, or we change the subject. We can even tell half the truth. And adults aren't necessarily very different from children. I imagine if you think about some of the questions you've asked in relationships, things like, "Hey, are you upset with me?" "No." "Well, did you spend that money?" "No." "Well, did you call him?" "Well, just for a minute." "Well, why didn't you tell me?" "Oh, I didn't think it mattered." But eventually we say, "Well, why can't you just be honest with me?" But here's what I would like you to think about. Maybe sometimes there's another question that we should ask first. What have I taught this person happens when they are honest with me? That could very well be an uncomfortable question, but it is a useful one. This is where non-reactive intelligence becomes very practical for me. It's every time someone tells us something we don't want to hear, there is a moment when our nervous system reacts. We feel the surge, maybe anger, but it could be fear or jealousy, disappointment, embarrassment. Our mind begins to construct a story. And almost immediately, we want to respond. But what happens next matters enormously, because our reaction teaches the other person what they can safely tell us. Think about that. Every reaction is teaching something. If honesty is met with contempt, we teach, hide it next time. If honesty is met with humiliation, we teach, don't let me see this part of you. If honesty threatens the relationship, we teach, protect yourself from me. And then later we may wonder why the heck people closest to us don't tell us what they're really thinking. But I feel there is another possibility to consider. When someone tells us something difficult, instead of immediately reacting, how about we pause? We take a conscious breath. We notice what is happening inside our own body. And then perhaps we can say something like, "Thank you for telling me the truth." That's an extraordinary sentence to utter to someone. It doesn't mean what you did was okay. It doesn't mean there won't be consequences. It doesn't mean, well, you can do whatever you want. It means the honesty itself is welcome here. So now we can deal with the behavior. That is exactly what I see Dorcas doing with Minnie. She doesn't remove accountability. Dorcas creates safety around truth. In one scene, she essentially tells Minnie, "Girl, you've never been taught. So I'm going to teach you. I will correct you when you need correcting. I will scold you when you need scolding. But I'm not going to throw you away." And that's beautiful. Because underneath everything else, Dorcas is communicating to Minnie, your mistakes do not threaten your belonging. I tried to understand this when I was with my own children. If they came to me and admitted something they had done wrong, I tried not to reprimand them for the truthfulness itself. Because if a child finally gathers enough courage to tell you the truth and you explode, what exactly have you taught them? You may think you've taught, well, don't do that again. But the lesson they actually learned may very well be, don't tell Dad next time. Those aren't the same thing. And I think the principle remains true when our children become adults. And when we're dealing with our friends or coworkers, and especially when we are dealing with intimate partners. Now, here's something practical you can try. The next time someone tells you a truth you don't like, remember 3 things. First, receive the truth before responding to the behavior. You might simply say, "Thank you for telling me," and then pause. Second, regulate yourself before deciding what the truth means. Notice your body. Notice the tightening, the heat, the fever, the fear. Notice the impulse to attack and correct. And give yourself enough time to separate what actually happened from the story that you are forming around it in your own mind. And third, make honesty safer than deception. Now, that doesn't mean eliminating consequences. It means making sure the consequences are connected to the behavior, not to the act of telling you about it. Those are different things. There's another phrase I've been thinking about since watching the Lark Rise to Candleford series. There's a lot of power in forgiving people first, then have the conversation. And I don't mean some grand spiritual declaration of forgiveness. I mean something quieter. Before I confront you, can I release enough of my immediate reaction that I no longer need to punish you emotionally? Can I become curious? Can I listen? Can I find out what actually happened? And can I make room for the possibility that there is something here I don't yet understand? There's a lesson in NRI, it's lesson number 7, and it says, space is sacred. It reveals what is real. When you offer space to someone when they are speaking to you, it's still okay to talk about boundaries. It's still okay to talk about responsibility. It's okay to talk about what needs to change. But you are no longer two frightened nervous systems trying to defeat one another. Instead, you become two human beings trying to understand what happened. Now, of course, none of this is going to guarantee that another person will become honest. We cannot manufacture integrity in someone else's behavior. Sometimes repeated deception tells us something important about a relationship. And non-reactive intelligence doesn't mean tolerating that. I think sometimes coherence means setting a boundary. And sometimes it means saying no. Sometimes it may even mean leaving. But here's the thing. There's a tremendous difference between a boundary made from clarity and a punishment delivered from reaction. And that's what we're learning to distinguish here. It's interesting that I've been thinking about all of this while working around our little place here in Oxley. I've been putting trim around the windows of the new bedroom and painting the boards gray, hammering things together, doing artwork, helping Diane with her whittling projects. I'm getting ready to put the siding on, build some porch steps. We've been enjoying our new convection oven and making scones and biscuits and popcorn. Meanwhile, Diane has been doing her artwork, enjoying playing with paints and colors, pieces of wood. She took a piece of cedar that came out of a burn pile and somehow discovered a moose hiding inside it. And she gave it eyes and a mouth and a little white tuft under its neck. She sprayed it with a clear finish, and suddenly all those beautiful variations in the cedar began looking almost like fur. There's nothing particularly extraordinary in what's happening around here. We're just making things, and we're learning things, and we're talking, and we're enjoying what we learn. And we make mistakes, but we try again. We're living together, communing together. And I think perhaps that's where these principles ultimately have to work. Not in theory, not in textbooks, not in a workshop, but between two people sharing just an ordinary life. Because the deepest relationships aren't necessarily the ones in which nobody ever makes a mistake. They're the ones in which truth has somewhere to go, where I can say, I was wrong, or I forgot. I was feeling afraid. I didn't tell you everything. I changed my mind. I don't understand. I need something. I hurt you. And the relationship is strong enough to remain present while we work with what is true. And maybe that's one of the greatest gifts we can give another human being. You don't have to lie to remain safe with me. I will listen. I'll tell you how I feel. I'll maintain my boundaries. I'll ask you to take responsibility. But I won't make honesty itself something you have to fear. So, my friends, the next time someone tells you something difficult, before asking, why would you do that? Try asking yourself, what am I about to teach this person about telling me the truth? Because honesty isn't only a virtue we demand from other people. It's also an environment that we help create. So until next time, peace be with you.